Ladies and gentlemen, look at me for a moment. Have you ever tried to walk while bleeding? Have you ever had to smile while your soul was screaming? Have you ever had to move forward with a heart that felt like it shattered in your own hands? If you know what I'm talking about, shout yes, because today I came to tell somebody you can be broken and still move. You can be wounded and still win. You can be hurting and still headed somewhere. Family, hear me. Life will break your heart in ways you never saw coming. People you trusted will disappoint you. Dreams you fought for will collapse. Plans you built will fall apart right in front of you. But I didn't come here today just to talk about heartbreak. No, no, no. I came to declare that broken hearts still beat. And as long as your heart is still beating, God is not finished with you yet. You may be walking with a limp. You may be moving slower than before. You may be carrying the weight of what tried to destroy you, but you are still moving. And sometimes, listen to me, healing doesn't start with feeling better. Healing starts when you refuse to stop moving. A broken heart is not a dead heart. Let me take my time with this because someone needs to hear it in a deeper way than just a sentence. When life hits you hard, when love walks away, when trust is violated, when you lose something you thought you could never live without, you begin to wonder if you will ever feel whole again. You start thinking, maybe this is it. Maybe this pain is permanent. Maybe the best parts of me died in that moment. But hear me clearly. The mere fact that you feel pain means your heart is still alive. Pain is not proof of death. Pain is proof of life. When a doctor checks if someone is alive, they look for a heartbeat. Spiritually, emotionally, and mentally, pain is that heartbeat. It's the signal that something inside you still cares, still remembers, still longs, still reaches. If your heart was truly dead, you wouldn't feel anything at all. You wouldn't cry, you wouldn't ache, you wouldn't grieve. The tears you cry are evidence that something in you is still fighting to live. Don't confuse brokenness with burial. A broken heart can beat again. A broken heart can love again. A broken heart can rise again. You see, we live in a culture that treats emotional pain like a shutdown switch. People go through something devastating and they convince themselves, I'm done, I'm finished. There's nothing left in me worth giving. But what if I told you that heartbreak is not your ending, it's your awakening? That what you're feeling right now is not the signal of your expiration, but the announcement of your transformation. When a seed breaks open, it looks like destruction, but it's really the beginning of new life. Sometimes your heart has to break in order to expand. Sometimes the old version of you has to crack so that a stronger, wiser, more compassionate version can emerge. Even in your brokenness, you are still capable of love. You are still capable of purpose. You are still capable of growth. That crack in your heart is not a grave, it's a doorway into deeper understanding, deeper empathy, deeper strength. When your heart breaks, it creates space for lessons you couldn't have learned any other way. It forces you to grow past the borders of who you used to be. Pain stretches you, loss humbles you, disappointment matures you, but none of it kills you. Just because you feel fractured doesn't mean you are finished. Think of a bone that breaks. When it heals, it often becomes stronger at the very place where the break occurred. The same is true for the heart. Where you were wounded, strength will grow. Where you were disappointed, wisdom will rise. Where you were abandoned, resilience will be built. The very area that hurt you the most is often where your greatest power will emerge. And let me tell you something else. Your heart is more resilient than you realize. You think you've reached the end of your capacity, but that heart inside you has survived storms you thought would drown you, nights you thought you wouldn't see the morning after, heartbreaks you thought would crush you permanently. But you're still here. You're still breathing. You're still standing, even if you're standing with tears running down your face. Strength doesn't always look like shouting. Sometimes strength is a quiet decision to wake up and face another day. Your heart is not dead. It is wounded, and wounds heal. Slowly, yes. Uncomfortably, yes. Not on your preferred timeline, yes. But they heal. Time may not heal everything, but willingness does. Openness does. Faith does. Movement does. You don't have to rush it. You don't have to pretend. You just have to keep breathing through it. Healing is not a moment, it's a journey. And you are on that journey right now. Even if you don't feel like you are, don't let the enemy convince you that your pain disqualifies you. Don't let your past tell you that you have no future. Don't let your heartbreak make you forget that you are still chosen, still valued, still destined for greatness. Broken hearts beat with a different rhythm, but they still beat. And God can use that rhythm. He can take the pieces and form something more beautiful than what you had before. He can rebuild you, not back into who you were, but into who you were meant to be. So if you feel broken today, don't assume that means you're finished. You are not defeated. You are in development. You are not destroyed. You are being reshaped. You are not dead. You are evolving. There is still life in you. There is still purpose in you. There is still hope in you. A broken heart is still a living heart. And as long as your heart is still living, your story is not over. You may be hurting, but you are still here. And that means there is more ahead, more joy, more love, more peace, more purpose. What broke you will not bury you. Your heart may be cracked, but it's still beating. And that beat is the sound of a future calling your name. God does his greatest work in broken places. Let that settle into your spirit for a moment, because it is one of the hardest truths to embrace when you are hurting. When life shatters something inside you, the first instinct is to believe that God has abandoned you. You look at the rubble of what used to be, your trusts, your plans, your relationships, your dreams, and you say, Lord, where are you in all of this? But listen to me, God is often the closest when you feel the most broken. You may not feel it, but he is there. You may not see movement, but he is working, and he is not working around your brokenness. He's working right through it. We like to think God does his best work in perfect places, polished places, places where everything is in order. But that's not where God's glory shows up the strongest. God does not wait for wholeness to begin his work. He steps into the fragments and starts shaping something new. He specializes in taking the broken pieces of a person's life and turning them into something that looks nothing like the pain that produced them. You think your brokenness is the end of your usefulness, but God sees it as the beginning of a miracle. He sees potential in the very pieces you wish you could throw away. You see, if you look all throughout Scripture, God consistently chooses broken people, broken seasons, and broken moments as the starting point for his greatest transformations. He met Moses in insecurity. He met Elijah in exhaustion. He met David in failure. He met Jonah in rebellion. He met Job in suffering. He met Paul in weakness. And he met Jesus at a cross, the most broken place of all. So why are you surprised that he is meeting you in your broken place right now? Why are you assuming that your brokenness disqualifies you when everything about God's track record proves the opposite? He steps into the messiest places because that is where his power is most clearly revealed. The reason God works in broken places is because brokenness makes space. When we are whole in our own eyes, when everything is functioning the way we want, when life feels stable and predictable, we often forget how much we truly need him. But when something breaks, when the heart cracks open, when the plans fall apart, when the path you were on gets interrupted, you suddenly become aware of your limitations. Brokenness strips away the illusion of control. It humbles you. It softens you. It makes you reachable. And in that reachability, God finds room to work. Not only does brokenness make space for God, it also makes space for transformation. Consider this: a potter cannot reshape a hardened vessel. It must be broken before it can be remolded. Gold cannot be purified unless it is melted. Wheat cannot feed anyone unless it is crushed. Grapes cannot become wine unless they are pressed. What feels like destruction is often preparation. What feels like loss is often the doorway to a new level of development. You may be praying, God, put me back together. But God may be saying, I'm not putting you back the way you were. I'm creating something better out of what's left. Sometimes the blessing is not in the breaking being removed, but in the breaking being redeemed. God knows how to take the very thing that was meant to destroy you and turn it into the foundation of your strength. That disappointment becomes wisdom. That betrayal becomes discernment. That heartbreak becomes compassion. That loss becomes purpose. You do not come out of brokenness empty. You come out equipped. The very area where your heart broke is often the area where God will empower you to help others. Your story becomes a lifeline for someone else's survival. Your scars become someone else's roadmap to healing. Let me tell you something that will challenge you. God is not intimidated by your brokenness. You may feel too damaged, too unstable, too wounded, too confused, too lost, but none of that scares him away. In fact, he leans toward the broken. He draws near to the crushed in spirit. He binds up the brokenhearted. You are exactly the type of person he loves to work with. Someone who doesn't have all the answers. Someone who has been through something real. Someone whose heart is tender enough to receive what he wants to do. So what if the place that hurts you the most becomes the place where God shows himself the strongest? What if the very moment you thought would break you permanently becomes the moment God uses to shift your entire life? What if the tears you cried are watering the seeds of something you cannot see yet? God is not wasting your pain. He is shaping you, stretching you, preparing you, positioning you. The breaking is not the end. It's the beginning of a divine reconstruction. You may not understand the process. You may feel like everything is falling apart beyond repair, but God sees the finished product. He sees what you will become on the other side. And if you could see through his eyes, you would not call this season destruction. You would call it development. You would not call it punishment. You would call it preparation. You would not call it breaking. You would call it building. So hold on. Not because things are easy, but because God is working in the very place where you feel the most broken. He is turning pain into purpose, wounds into wisdom, and heartbreak into strength. The place that broke you is not the place where you will die. It is the place where God is about to resurrect something new inside of you. Movement is medicine. You may not feel like moving, you may not feel like standing, you may not feel like putting one foot in front of the other, but movement is the very thing that starts the healing process. When life hits you so hard that you feel paralyzed, when the weight of heartbreak presses down on your chest so heavily that even breathing feels like work, your instinct is to stop, to freeze, to shut down, to withdraw. But stillness in the wrong season can become suffocation. If you stay stuck in the same place where pain found you, the pain begins to grow roots. It starts settling in. It becomes a home in your mind rather than a moment in your life. That's why movement, any movement, is so essential. I'm not talking about running full speed. I'm not talking about pretending you're okay. I'm not talking about jumping into the next big thing to distract yourself. I'm talking about movement in its most basic form, choosing not to stop living, even while you're hurting. Healing rarely comes in a dramatic moment. It comes in the daily decision to keep going. It's waking up and saying, I don't feel strong, but I'm getting up anyway. It's taking small steps when big steps feel impossible. It's choosing progress over paralysis. Sometimes movement looks like making your bed. Sometimes it looks like leaving the house when all you want to do is hide. Sometimes it looks like picking up your phone and calling someone who encourages you. Sometimes it's praying when you don't have the words, or listening to music that lifts your spirit. Movement isn't about speed, it's about direction. As long as you're moving, you're refusing to let the pain freeze you in place. And let me tell you something, healing rarely happens while you stand still. When water stops flowing, it becomes stagnant. When the heart stops beating, the body dies. When you stop moving, the pain begins to harden into hopelessness. That's why the enemy wants you to get stuck. Not because the pain is permanent, but because stuck places prevent transformation. Movement is the sign that you're still fighting. It's the sign that somewhere inside you, even if it's small, you still believe that tomorrow can be better than today. Movement also interrupts the lies that heartbreak whispers. When you sit too long in your pain, you start believing things that aren't true. This is the end. Nothing will ever change. I'm not worth loving. I'll never get past this. But movement proves your heart wrong. It tells your mind, I am still capable of living, even while I am healing. Motion creates perspective. When you move, the scenery changes. When you stay still, all you see is what hurt you. Think about physical injuries. A doctor will tell you that after certain surgeries or fractures, you must move. Not because it feels good, but because movement prevents the injury from stiffening and becoming worse. If you don't move, the healing process slows. The same is true emotionally. Emotional movement keeps your heart from forming scar tissue that limits future love, future hope, future joy. But hear me, movement does not mean you ignore your pain. Movement means you don't surrender to it. You face it, you process it, you honor it, you learn from it, but you do not camp in it. You keep shifting forward, even if your steps are shaky, even if you're crying while you walk, even if your heart feels like it's dragging behind you. Movement is not glamorous. It's not always confident. It's not always beautiful. Sometimes it's messy. Sometimes it's slow. Sometimes it's nothing more than refusing to fall apart today the way you did yesterday. And here's something powerful. Movement attracts grace. When you take one step, God meets you with strength for the next. When you choose to move, heaven chooses to help. God has a way of adding power to your progress, but he often waits for you to take the first step, not because he needs your action, but because movement is a declaration of faith. It's your way of saying, Lord, I don't know what I'm doing, but I trust you enough to keep walking. That trust opens the door for God to guide you, heal you, restore you, and lead you somewhere better. Movement also builds momentum. One small step leads to another. One phone call leads to another moment of clarity. One prayer leads to one more ounce of peace. One walk outside leads to one fresh breath of hope. Healing begins slowly, but every step forward accumulates. Before you even realize it, you find yourself in a new emotional place. Not because the pain vanished overnight, but because movement gradually relocated you. Movement doesn't erase the past, but it pulls you out of it. Movement doesn't deny the hurt, but it prevents hurt from becoming your home. You can cry while moving. You can grieve while moving. You can be confused while moving. You can even feel broken while moving. But you cannot stay broken if you keep moving. Pain may follow you for a while, but pain can't keep up forever. If you keep going step by step, breath by breath, one day you'll look back and realize the pain that once held you hostage has lost its power. So don't wait to feel whole before you move. Don't wait to feel strong. Don't wait until the storm settles or the emotions calm down. Healing begins with motion. Your movement is your medicine. Every forward step is a statement that your story is not over, your life is not done, and your heart, though wounded, still has a future. Movement may not solve everything instantly, but stopping solves nothing at all. Keep moving, slowly, quietly, painfully if you must, but keep moving. Your healing is in your motion. Your strength is in your steps. Your future is waiting ahead of you, not behind. Stop pretending you're not hurting. That sentence alone could tear down walls inside a lot of people because so many of us have mastered the art of hiding pain. We put on smiles so no one sees the storm behind our eyes. We answer, I'm fine, even when our hearts are bleeding. We keep performing, keep pushing, keep functioning as if we are not carrying wounds that we never had the chance to heal. But pretending you're okay doesn't protect you. It traps you. It locks you inside an emotional prison where you micromanage your image instead of tending to your injuries. So many people have been conditioned to believe that strength means silence, that healing requires hiding, that vulnerability is weakness. But the truth is the opposite. Real strength begins with honesty. Healing begins with truth. Transformation begins with the courage to admit, I'm not okay right now. You cannot heal from what you refuse to acknowledge. You cannot release what you keep pretending doesn't exist. Your heart may be screaming on the inside, but if you keep silencing it with shallow smiles and forced positivity, the pain will keep festering beneath the surface. Pretending creates pressure. It forces you to carry emotional weight alone, and the human soul was not designed to carry grief, disappointment, and heartbreak in isolation. When you hide your pain, you're not just hiding it from others, you're hiding it from yourself. You bury it so deeply that even you lose track of how much you're really holding. And buried pain doesn't disappear, it grows. It spreads into your thoughts, contaminates your self-worth, disrupts your peace, and sabotages your relationships. What you bury alive eventually rises again, and often at the worst possible time. Let me be clear. Acknowledging your hurt doesn't make you dramatic. It makes you human. Crying doesn't make you weak, it makes you real. Admitting your heart is broken doesn't mean you've lost faith, it means you've stopped lying to yourself. You cannot build a future on a foundation of denial. You cannot move forward carrying a heart that you keep refusing to treat. Some people pretend they're not hurting because they think no one will care. Others pretend because they've been taught that emotions are burdens. Some pretend because they want to protect others from discomfort. And some pretend because they fear being judged, misunderstood, or dismissed. But here is the truth you need to breathe in. Your pain is valid. Your emotions matter. Your heart deserves space to speak. Pretending is exhausting. It drains you. It steals your energy. It forces you to maintain a facade that gets heavier every day. You might be functioning, but you're functioning from fumes. You're showing up, but you're showing up depleted. And after a while, the mask becomes so heavy that you forget who you are underneath it. You start to believe the lie you're selling, that you're okay. But deep down, your soul knows the truth. It knows you're not healed, not whole, not restored. And it will keep sending signals, fatigue, frustration, irritability, sadness, breakdowns to get your attention. There is freedom in admitting you're hurt. There is power in saying, I'm broken, but I'm here. When you allow yourself to feel the pain, you also open yourself to feel the healing. Pain demands expression, not suppression. Tears are not setbacks, they are releases. They're the body's way of making room for something new. When you cry, when you speak the truth, when you let the weight come off your chest, you create space for clarity, for comfort, for growth, and eventually for joy. You do not have to be strong all the time. You do not have to have it all together. You are not required to perform emotional perfection to be worthy of love, support, and healing. You are allowed to fall apart. You are allowed to admit when life hits too hard. You are allowed to take off the mask and breathe again. Honesty also opens the door for help. When you stop pretending, you give others the chance to walk with you, to support you, to lift you when you can't lift yourself. And even more importantly, you give God access to the parts of your heart you've been hiding. God cannot heal the places you hide from him. He waits for honesty, not because he doesn't know the truth, but because you cannot receive healing for wounds you refuse to expose. Some people think being honest about their pain means they'll drown in it, but the opposite is true. Hiding pain is what causes drowning. When you bring your hurt into the light, through prayer, through conversation, through journaling, through reflection, it loses its power over you. What is exposed can be treated. What is revealed can be restored. What is confessed can be changed. And let me tell you something beautiful. When you stop pretending, you give others permission to be real too. Your vulnerability becomes a safe place for someone else's truth. Your honesty becomes a bridge for someone else's healing. The same transparency that feels terrifying to you could be the lifeline for someone else who thought they were alone. So today, let the mask fall. Let the truth rise. Let the tears come if they need to. Say the words you've been afraid to say. I'm hurting, I'm tired, I'm struggling, I'm broken. Not because you want pity, but because you want freedom, because you want healing, because you want wholeness, because you're tired of pretending to be a version of yourself that doesn't match the reality of your heart. Healing begins with truth. And the truth is, you don't have to pretend anymore. You don't have to hide. You don't have to be invincible. You don't have to carry it alone. You can be honest. You can be human. And in your honesty, you will find the beginning of your healing. Release what you cannot repair. This may be one of the most difficult truths for a hurting heart to accept, because when something we love breaks, our instinct is to fix it, rebuild it, restore it, glue every shattered piece back together. We try to hold on to relationships that no longer hold us. We try to revive seasons that have already expired. We try to force closure where there is none. And we fight to make sense of things that were never meant to make sense. But there comes a moment when you must face the truth. Not everything broken was meant to be put back the way it was. Some things break because their purpose is finished. Some things break because their time in your life has ended. Some things break because they were never strong enough to carry you into the next chapter. And some things break because God himself is pulling them apart, not to hurt you, but to protect you. But the heart struggles with release. It aches for the familiar, even when the familiar is harmful. It clings to memories, even when those memories weigh it down. It reaches for people who have already walked away. It tries to breathe life into what is already gone. We must learn the art of letting go, not because we are giving up, but because holding on is costing us more than the thing we're clinging to is worth. Holding on to what cannot be repaired drains you. It steals your peace, your joy, your identity, your future. It keeps your heart stuck in places your feet have already left. It ties your soul to moments that no longer exist. And you can't move forward if your hands are full of what used to be. Letting go does not mean you never cared. It does not mean you are betraying your past. It does not mean you are heartless or cold. Letting go simply means you are choosing yourself. You are choosing healing over history. You are choosing peace over chaos. You are choosing purpose over pain. And you are choosing to trust that if something is no longer in your life, it is because God has something better, bigger, or healthier ahead. Many people keep trying to repair what cannot be restored because they're terrified of the empty space that release creates, the space where the person used to be, the space where the dream used to live, the space where the plan used to thrive. But empty space is not punishment, it is invitation. It is room for God to fill. It is territory for new blessings to grow. It is the clearing where something better can be planted. Sometimes God has to remove the wrong thing before the right thing can have room to stand. Release is not a one-time event. It is a process. It is waking up one morning determined to move on, then crying again by afternoon. It is deleting the message thread and then remembering a moment that tears you open. It is blocking the number and then wondering if you made the right choice. Release happens slowly, in layers, in waves. But every wave washes a little more of the pain away. Every layer lifts a little more of the weight. Every step forward breaks another chain around your heart. One of the greatest obstacles to release is the desire for closure. We want explanations. We want apologies. We want answers that make sense of the hurt. But sometimes closure is not something you receive, it's something you create. If the other person never apologizes, you can still heal. If the situation never makes sense, you can still move forward. If the ending was abrupt, painful, or unfair, you can still rise. Closure is not about them. It is about you deciding that your heart deserves peace more than it deserves an explanation. There is also a type of repair that belongs only to God. Some situations are too tangled, too painful, too complicated for human hands to fix. Some wounds are too deep for your own strength to heal. When you try to repair what only God can restore, you end up hurting yourself more. You take responsibility for outcomes you cannot control. You hold yourself hostage to expectations that can never be fulfilled. But when you release it, when you say, God, I cannot fix this, but I trust you with it, you give God permission to heal in ways you never could. Releasing what you cannot repair also means releasing the version of yourself that was tied to that situation. The version of you that loved them, the version that believed in that dream, the version that thought the story would go differently. Letting go often requires grieving who you were before the heartbreak happened. But that grief is not a setback. It is part of your evolution. You are not losing yourself. You are shedding what no longer fits. Once you release what cannot be repaired, something remarkable happens. You begin to breathe again. Not instantly, not all at once, but slowly the heaviness lifts, the clarity returns, the noise fades, the constant emotional tug of war stops. Your heart becomes lighter, your mind becomes clearer, your spirit becomes stronger, and you realize that the thing you were fighting to keep was actually the thing keeping you from becoming whole. Releases trust. Releases maturity, releases strength, releases freedom, and freedom is the birthplace of healing. So breathe deeply and open your hands. Let the pieces fall where they may. What is meant for you cannot be broken away from you. What left you was not meant to carry your future. Release what you cannot repair, not because you're giving up, but because you're growing up. And as you release, you make room for the restoration your heart has been praying for. Carry lessons, not the weight. This truth can transform your entire healing process if you let it. Because when a heart breaks, the pain that follows is heavy. So heavy that it tries to attach itself to every part of your life. It clings to your thoughts. It shadows your emotions. It follows you into new relationships, new seasons, new opportunities. And if you're not careful, you don't just come out of heartbreak with lessons. You come out with luggage. Emotional baggage that slows you down, weighs you down and pulls you down long after the moment that caused it has passed. But you were never meant to carry the weight of what broke you. You were meant to carry the wisdom. The weight is the part that crushes you. The lesson is the part that grows you. The weight is what keeps you stuck. The lesson is what helps you rise. The weight is your past trying to claim your future. The lesson is your future learning from your past. And the more you can separate the two, the more you can let go of the heaviness while holding onto the insight, the freer and stronger you become. The weight is made up of things that do not serve your healing. Guilt, shame, regret, anger, resentment, self-blame, fantasies of what could have been, questions that have no answer, expectations that were never met, and disappointment that you replay over and over again in your mind. These things take up emotional space, and they suffocate your ability to move forward. You try to walk, but the weight drags behind you like chains on your ankles. But lessons, those are different. Lessons are gentle. They are light. They don't imprison you. They empower you. They don't close you off. They awaken you. A lesson says, I didn't go through that pain for nothing. I learned something about myself. I learned something about others. I learned something about boundaries, discernment, trust, or timing. Lessons give value to your struggle. They turn your suffering into purpose. The weight is emotional residue, but the lesson is emotional revelation. The weight reminds you of what hurt you. The lesson reminds you that you survived it. The challenge is that many people cannot distinguish between the two. They think they're holding on to wisdom when they're actually holding on to wounds. They think they're remembering, so they won't repeat the past, but really they're replaying the trauma and binding themselves to it. They think they're being cautious, but the caution isn't discernment. It's fear in disguise. Carrying the weight keeps your heart guarded in unhealthy ways. You become suspicious of everyone. You assume abandonment. You expect betrayal. You interpret silence as rejection and imperfection as deception. The weight turns your heart into stone, not because you want it that way, but because the weight doesn't give your heart room to beat freely. But when you carry the lesson instead of the weight, you move differently. You love again, but wiser. You trust again, but slower. You give again, but with boundaries. You show up again, but with clarity. Lessons don't close your heart. They shape it. They don't make you bitter. They make you better. There is a reason why the heart feels lighter when it learns instead of holds. Lessons expand you. Weight shrinks you. Lessons open you. Weight closes you. Lessons prepare you. Weight paralyzes you. It's not that the weight isn't real. It is. It's not that the pain didn't happen. It did. It's not that what broke you didn't change you. It absolutely changed you. But you get to choose how it changes you. You can let it harden you or humble you. You can let it break you further or build you up. You can let it make you fearful or make you wise. One of the most liberating realizations in healing is that you do not have to carry everything that came from the pain. You can sift through it. You can separate what is useful from what is harmful. You can keep the knowledge while releasing the heaviness. You can say, I learned what I needed to learn, but I am no longer holding the hurt. This is why forgiveness is powerful, not because it excuses the wrong, but because it removes the weight of resentment from your heart. This is why acceptance is powerful, not because it means you liked what happened, but because it stops you from fighting a reality that cannot be changed. This is why reflection is powerful, not because it makes the pain disappear, but because it helps you extract meaning from it. When you carry only the lesson, you make room within yourself for healing. You make room for joy to return. You make room for hope to grow again. You make room for love to enter again, not the naive love of before, but a stronger, wiser, healthier love. You make room for peace, the kind that doesn't depend on circumstances. And the most important part, carrying the lesson helps you move forward because you're no longer dragging the weight of what broke you. You're stepping into the future with the wisdom you gained from the past. You're not repeating patterns because you're aware of them now. You're not falling for the same traps because you can recognize them. You're not settling for less because you know your worth. You're not losing yourself because you've learned how to protect your heart. So today, shift what you carry. Let the weight fall off your shoulders. Put down the guilt, the regret, the anger, the old story that keeps replaying. Pick up the lessons, the insights, the clarity, the strength, the maturity. What hurt you was heavy, but what it taught you is powerful. Carry the lesson, not the weight. That's how you move forward. That's how you heal. That's how you rise. Forgiveness frees you, not them. This is one of the hardest truths for the human heart to accept, especially when the pain is fresh and the wound is still open. When someone has hurt you deeply, betrayed you, abandoned you, lied to you, disappointed you, it feels almost impossible to imagine releasing them from the emotional debt they owe you. It feels unfair, almost like you're letting them off the hook. But forgiveness is not about freeing them from responsibility. It is about freeing you from captivity. Unforgiveness chains you to the very moment that broke you. It binds you to the offense. It handcuffs your spirit to the person who wounded you, keeping you emotionally tied to someone who may have already moved on with their life. When you refuse to forgive, the wound doesn't heal. It festers. It becomes infected with bitterness, resentment, anger, and regret. And while the person who hurt you may be sleeping peacefully, you are the one replaying the hurt every night. You are the one carrying the weight. You are the one bleeding from a cut that could have started healing long ago. Forgiveness is not a feeling, it is a decision. A decision to stop letting the past poison your present. A decision to stop letting someone else's actions dictate your emotional health. A decision to reclaim your peace. When you forgive, you are not saying what they did was okay. You are saying what they did is no longer controlling me. Forgiveness is not reconciliation. Forgiveness does not require friendship, contact, or trust. Forgiveness simply means letting go of a toxic grip that the hurt has on your heart. Many people hold on to unforgiveness because they believe the pain gives them power. They think their anger protects them. But bitterness is a false shield. It doesn't protect you. It imprisons you. It blocks joy. It suffocates peace. It becomes a filter through which you interpret everything. You cannot fully love, fully trust, or fully live with bitterness in your heart. The bars of unforgiveness may be invisible, but they are strong. And the only key that unlocks them is forgiveness. Forgiveness is also a form of wisdom. It keeps you from poisoning your future with the venom of your past. When you refuse to forgive, the hurt becomes part of your identity. You start to define yourself by what was done to you rather than who you truly are. But forgiveness separates your identity from your injury. It says, I am more than what happened to me. I am not the pain I experienced. I am not the betrayal I endured. I am not the disappointment I carried. Forgiveness allows you to reclaim the parts of you that pain tried to steal. And let's be real, forgiveness is not instant. It's not a switch you flip. Sometimes it takes time, layers, tears, prayers, and repeated decisions. One day you feel free. The next day you feel angry again. One day you feel light, the next day the memory triggers you all over again. But each moment you choose forgiveness is a moment you take back power. Forgiveness is not a single event, it's a journey. And every step of that journey removes a little more of the weight from your heart. Some people think forgiveness means forgetting, but that's not true. You don't heal by forgetting. You heal by remembering differently. You heal when the memory no longer controls your emotions. You heal when you can think about what happened without reliving the pain. You heal when the story becomes part of your past, not your present. Forgiveness helps you break the emotional link. Even if the mental memory remains, there's also a deeper spiritual truth. Forgiveness aligns you with healing. Think of forgiveness as opening a window. When you open it, fresh air flows in. When you close it, the room becomes stuffy and suffocating. The heart is the same. When you forgive, you create space for peace, clarity, joy, and renewal to enter. When you refuse, you keep your heart locked in emotional darkness. Forgiveness is your way of saying, I deserve light. I deserve freedom. I deserve a future unburdened by this pain. And here's something many people overlook. Forgiveness is for your growth. Every time you forgive, you get stronger. You learn about boundaries. You learn about resilience. You learn about self-worth. You learn how to protect yourself without shutting yourself off. You learn how to recognize red flags, how to value your heart, and how to choose healthier relationships. Forgiveness is not surrender. It is evolution. Forgiving someone does not mean restoring what was broken. Some relationships are not meant to be resurrected. Some people are not meant to return. Some chapters are not meant to be reopened. Forgiveness is not an invitation for them to come back into your life. It is a release that allows you to move forward with dignity, clarity, and peace. And sometimes the hardest person to forgive is yourself. We blame ourselves for what we tolerated, for what we didn't see, for what we ignored, for what we gave, for what we lost. But self-forgiveness is essential. You cannot move forward carrying condemnation. You cannot grow while holding yourself hostage. You did the best you could with the information and strength you had at the time. Forgive yourself so you can become who you were meant to be. Forgiveness frees you because it cuts emotional chains. It loosens the ties that bind you to pain. It clears the fog in your mind. It lifts the heaviness in your spirit. It restores your ability to love again, to trust again, to hope again. Forgiveness is freedom, deep soul-level freedom. And when you choose to forgive, you choose yourself. You choose healing. You choose peace. You choose a future that is not defined by what hurt you, but by who you are becoming.